A young boy stood silently in the corner of the room. Before his father had just returned from the hospital. He had an injured leg. He couldn't work. No health insurance. No money coming in. No guarantee of a future. In that small, cramped apartment, fear felt more real than hope. The boy saw something he would never forget. Not his father's injury, not his family's poverty, but the despair in the eyes of a man unable to provide for his family. The moment lasted only a few minutes, but it would shape the course of his life forever. And decades later, that boy, who grew up in poverty, would build one of the most recognizable brands in the world. The question is, how did all this happen?
He is the face of a global empire. But Howard Schultz's story didn't begin in a boardroom. The man who transformed a small coffee shop into a global phenomenon known to billions. But this story isn't about coffee. It's not about business. It's not about wealth. It's a story of poverty, about shame, about uncertainty, and about a child who promised himself that his family wouldn't experience the same suffering he'd seen. Because sometimes the greatest successes are born from the deepest wounds, and Howard Schultz's journey proves it.
Howard Schultz was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in a modest neighborhood filled with working-class families. His family lived paycheck to paycheck, no savings, no business connections, no luxuries. There was just a struggle to survive. His father worked odd jobs, driving trucks, delivering goods, looking for any available job. Every day was a gamble. Every week, a new anxiety, and when Howard was about 7 years old, tragedy struck. His father had a work accident. He injured his ankle and hip. He couldn't work. But what was even more painful was the next reality. No health insurance, no adequate compensation, no meaningful assistance. In a matter of days, his family fell into deeper trouble. Howard saw it all. He saw the bills pile up. He saw the stress that was destroying his family. He saw the shame that silently ate away at his father. As a child, he didn't fully understand economics, but he did understand one thing. Poverty makes a person feel helpless. And that feeling left a deep scar. While his friends dreamed of becoming athletes or celebrities, Howard dreamed of security, of stability, of a life where his family wouldn't have to fear losing everything because of a single accident. His childhood wasn't filled with inspirational stories. He didn't grow up surrounded by examples of successful entrepreneurs. There were no business mentors. There were no wealthy investors. There were no shortcuts. There was only an environment that often told him that life had limits, that the poor would always be poor, that big dreams weren't for the likes of them. But Howard refused to accept that belief. Even so, the struggle didn't stop. As a teenager, he saw many of his friends trapped in the same cycle. Little hope, limited opportunities, a future that felt predetermined even before they were adults. And frankly, he was afraid his life would end the same. Afraid of spending his life feeling like he had no choices. Afraid of being a victim of circumstance. That fear turned into fuel. Howard began to focus on his education. He worked hard to get opportunities that many in his community didn't have. When he finally managed to get into college, he became the first in his family to achieve that. But even while in college, financial hardships still plagued him. He had to work while studying. He had to struggle to meet basic needs. He had to constantly prove that he belonged there. After graduation, life didn't change immediately. He worked at various companies, learned about sales, learned about people, learned about business. But deep inside, there was still a little kid from Brooklyn who never forgot what happened to his father. The memory lingers, like an old wound that never truly goes away. And without him realizing it, that wound is shaping his future. Because sometimes suffering isn't just painful. Sometimes suffering teaches us something. Something we didn't understand at the time. Something that only makes sense years later.
In the early 1980s, Howard Schultz discovered a small coffee shop in Seattle. It was unassuming. It wasn't well known. It didn't have thousands of locations. No one expected that small shop would change his life. It was called Starbucks. Howard was intrigued, not by the size of the business, not by the huge profits. There was something different, something that made him see the possibilities. While traveling to Italy, he had an experience that changed his perspective. He saw coffee shops that weren't just places to buy drinks. People gathered, talking, laughing, building relationships. Coffee shops became a part of people's lives, and that's when an idea was born. What if Starbucks was more than just a coffee shop? What if it became a space for people to connect? Many doubted his vision. Many said the idea was too risky, too expensive, too ambitious. But Howard was used to hearing doubt. He'd heard it his whole life. And for the first time, he chose to trust his vision over his fears. That decision changed everything.
Starbucks began to grow. Then it grew even faster. Then it grew far beyond what anyone had ever imagined. One store became dozens. Tens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Until finally, Starbucks was present in every corner of the world. Howard Schultz became one of the most influential business figures of his generation. But the most interesting part of this story isn't the numbers. It's not the company's value. It's not the number of stores. His greatest lessons lie in the decisions he made as a leader. Howard never forgot his father. He never forgot the day his family lost their sense of security. And because of that, he built the company differently. He believed that workers deserve protection. They deserve health benefits. They deserve to be treated like human beings. For many, that's just company policy. For Howard Schultz, it was the answer to a childhood wound. A wound that never went away. A wound that turned into purpose. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of this story. Poverty can destroy a person, but it can also shape a person. It all depends on how we respond to it. Howard Schultz didn't let his past become a prison. He used it as a compass. He used childhood suffering as a reminder of who he was, about where he came from, and about the people he couldn't forget when he finally reached the top.
Now I want to ask you a question. If the most difficult experience in your life turned out to be preparing you for something greater, Would you have the patience to keep going? Is there a past experience that you once considered a burden, but now you realize actually made you stronger? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, because maybe the experience you share can be a beacon of hope for someone else struggling today. And if you enjoy inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more incredible stories of people who have successfully turned hardship into strength. See you in the next video. And remember, sometimes the greatest success doesn't come from an easy life, but from the courage to keep going when life feels hardest.